Well, thank you guys again for your time with the several inches of snow that we got yesterday. I know a lot of the roads are cleared out and the parking lot's good to go now. So I wanted to start with a couple of stories, and then we'll do some review. Especially want to take a few minutes for review for so many new faces, because you're kind of jumping right in the middle of something. Jumping in the middle of a series on a godly man as a brother in the body, talking about what it's like to be a man that's in a local church. And if this church is your home, which most of you, it looks like it is, and I want to continue to encourage you to get connected. So first story, a few years ago, I was talking to a gentleman down in Texas. He was a missionary in India, and he was home in the States for a little while, going and visiting the people who helped finance him to be a missionary over there. And he shared an interesting story as he was talking to a Hindu man. He was a Hindu man that was kind of known in the area, and when he was talking to him about, hey, what do you see? What do you observe? And trying to share the gospel. And the man was saying, in Hinduism, we have all these kinds of stories that you're sharing with me. We've got miracles. We've got this, that, and the other thing. But what really caused me to perk up and pay attention is when I saw how you guys at your church, you love each other. And that's just how, it caught me off guard. We don't have anything like that. We have no reason for that. That's what the Hindu guy was describing. That's what drew him to hear more about Christ, which is interesting because his own words were, that's what showed me that you guys believe in the one true God. Because we've got all of our separations and caste system and so forth. That was quite surprising. It was not necessarily the message that got him first. It was the evidence of that message that drew him later to hear the message. You guys probably also may have seen this story on news a few years ago. There's a Coptic church in Egypt, and a suicide bomber came in. So there's always a guard in front of these churches to watch out for this very thing. The suicide bomber came running and screaming, which you would expect him to be screaming, and the guard tackles him. And it blows up. The guard and obviously the bomber die instantly, but he saves all of his brothers and sisters in his church building. And then later, obviously, the news is reporting on it, and the news is interviewing leaders and members of that church. And, it's not very much time has gone by, but they're already committed to say, we forgive him. We want him to know who God really is. And this is in Egypt. The news reporter who's listening to this, he goes silent for several seconds, which, in news terms is, forever, to have a pause like that is unnatural in news. They know how to keep talking and go. And then he cries out, these Coptics are made of steel. I had to watch that news report several times. And I know there's plenty of other news reports that you guys could see that of similar groups of Christians in various places, whether it's here in America, like in Amish community being persecuted in Ohio, I can't remember when that was, or other places in the Middle East. It's to say this congregation is unified and solidified, and this is how we do. We will forgive others as God has forgiven us. A last story is 1,800 years old. So this is from Cyprian, who is a leader in Carthage, which we call Tunisia, North Africa right now. This might sound very familiar to you given the last couple of years. So I'm just going to read the historical account. He is kind of like the bishop. He's like the head over several churches in the area in the mid-200s AD. So just a couple hundred years after Jesus has ascended. Still, if it seemed well, let me glance at the rest. Afterwards, there broke out a dreadful plague. An excessive destruction of a hateful disease invaded every house in succession of the trembling populace, carrying off day by day with abrupt attack numberless people. Everyone was taken out of their own house. They were all shuddering, fleeing, shunning the contagion, impiously exposing their own friends, as if with the exclusion of the person who was to die of the plague, they could exclude themselves from death as well. There lay about, in the meanwhile, over the whole city, no longer bodies, but the carcasses of many. And by the contemplation of a whole bunch of people who realize that that's about to be their lot very soon because the contagion is spreading. No one regarded anything besides his cruel gains. No one trembled at the remembrance of a similar event, which happened a couple of decades before. No one did to another what he wished to have done to himself. In these circumstances, it would be wrong to pass over what our leader has done, as he explained to us, affection. On the people assembled together in one place, he urged the benefits of mercy, teaching them from the scriptures how great the duty of being benevolent, being kind to those around. Later, he's going to ask all the people in his city to stay within the city and serve and love those who are being ravaged by a plague. Well, those people who stayed, okay, they get sick, they die. Some pass through, but their numbers are, they're tending to wounded, they're tending to sores, they're tending to all kinds of circumstances and, what's that word I'm looking for? The things that show up in a disease. Symptoms, yeah. They're sitting right there with them. Those people are tended to, they hear the gospel before they're passing away, instead of just piling up bodies, which was the case everywhere else. And it spread through North Africa. So I find this to be like some amazing stories of just recent past and a long past. And these are some stories that cause me to say, well, why is it? Why is it that a leader and a whole church body would do these types of things? I mean, there's tons of reasons. They have a certain outlook on, we are the body. These people are only going to hear it if we were to stay in this city, or if I am going to stand guard. Then the people inside are going to be able to hear about the gospel. The people who are watching on the news are going to hear about how great our God is, that we're willing to sacrifice ourselves for it. And it's a group mentality because they draw strength from each other, right? They get to see, hey, I see you out there sacrificing. I'm willing to sacrifice as well because I see you. I'm encouraged by you. And I think it really gives a helpful outlook on what the body is. Like, this is not an overnight thing, right? This is not, oh, hey, next day we had a suicide bomber, and then that's how we respond as the church. That's not how it happens. So in this whole series that I'm trying to do, the big thing I want to do is raise the priority level of your brothers and sisters. For most Americans, if they're attending church, the church is like number 10 or 11, way past their fourth or fifth hobby. They got plenty of other things they'll do before they attend to a brother or sister in the Lord. So I'm just trying to raise that value because I think you guys will see the value in it. You'll get to see what God is able to do in and through you, and you'll get to see that received from other men as they care for you, as they serve you, as they help you in understanding the scriptures like we're doing tonight. So those are a few stories, and I hope you're finding them encouraging, and I encourage you guys to share others that you have. But I'm going to go ahead and review, because these are things that, again, we're talking about lots of passages, and I know we kind of seems like we're talking about a lot of disparate things because we are kind of spreading ourselves, but they're all related. They have this common theme of we are the body of Christ, we are a family, which is one of the first things that we ended up talking about. Uh-oh, did it not work? It's not working. Shucks. Yes. Am I turning red yet? I can feel my ears. Yeah. Yeah, if you could sit back there and do that, that'd be great. Thank you. So you go to the first chart. Yeah, keep going. Yeah, I was trying to click it. No wonder it wasn't happening. Okay, so this is what we talked about 2 weeks ago when we said, in the body, we are members of one another, and picking up on this family imagery, which, as you can see, there's a whole bunch of passages that talked about this kind of family imagery of we relate to God, and that relationship with God kind of shows us if we're going to be children of God, well, we are children of God with other people. And then God has called us to himself, and he has some obligations. Okay, now that you are now part of my family, live with my family that I'm calling towards holiness and calling towards showing the world the glory of my name. So those are several passages that we talked about a few weeks ago that kind of lays the foundation for what we say in a lot of terms that we use. Okay, next one. This is what we talked about last week of our goals. Like, why do we do this thing in the church? Okay, this is not a complete list. This is only a list going with our one word, our word alelon, that we're kind of tracking with. The first is peace and harmony that we saw taken from Jesus' own lips. And then unity, especially Ephesians 4, 1 through 3. We definitely read through that, showing we are able to do and we want to do and we desire to do, and this is our habit, to build up unity within the body. And then the goal of love, with Jesus setting the bar at John 13, 34, 35, he gives a new commandment that you would love one another as he is loved, which he shows the sacrificial love shortly thereafter as he goes to the cross and rises from the dead. So this week, we're going to go ahead and talk about positive things. And I'm not just saying positivity for the sake of positivity. I'm thinking these are all things that we're said to positively do, versus in a couple weeks, and next week, we're going to talk about things that we are asked to not do. So things we should be doing, things we should not be doing. So in these two categories, you can go ahead and put them up. That one, right? That was right. In the positive, there's actions and communication. Getting real practical. So with the actions, there's really two categories of actions you're going to see. And I want to give you guys a heads up about a few things related to this first category of serve. So you guys, if you were here for this past Sunday's sermon, you heard Pastor West talk about there's really not like, we can get rid of these excuses. There's not a lot of excuses that we should be grabbing onto of why we can't serve, why we can't get involved, why we can't do something in God's kingdom to advance the gospel. He kind of took away the excuse of, I'm old, I'm too young, I'm not able, I can't speak well, all these things. And he said, a lot of things that help kind of put those things to the side so you know, I can serve, I can do this. And he even gave some personal examples of how he is often like intimidated to get up and do public speaking, albeit he does it like pretty much every week to get over his fear there. So I want to have you guys open up to Galatians and see this example of serving. Galatians chapter 5. Galatians chapter 5, verses 13 to 14. For you are called to freedom, brothers and sisters. Only do not use your freedom as an opportunity to indulge your flesh, but through love serve one another. For the whole law can be summed up in a single commandment, namely, you must love your neighbor as yourself. So you've got a chance to serve your brothers and sisters as an appropriate way to use your freedom. So I have memorized Romans 8:1. And some of you guys, this will sound familiar. It is for freedom that Christ has set us free. But now Paul is also clarifying that freedom is not just to go willy-nilly doing whatever. It's now to free you up to be his hands and feet and to serve. So you're going to hear also this idea of we serve together. like in Ecclesiastes 9:10. If you guys want to jump back there real quick. I think it's kind of like a proverb statement that you're going to see the benefit of having other people to lean on. Ecclesiastes 9:10. It says, two are better than one because they have a good return for their labor. For if either one of them falls, the one will lift up his companion. But woe to the one who falls when there is not another one to lift him up. Okay? Well, I'm not encouraging you guys to go serve and champion a certain thing all by yourself. You have brothers and sisters. You got a lot of great brothers right here who can help you serve, and you can see the benefit of that because you feed off of each other's energy. Like, hey, I see him going. I can keep going. I can be encouraged. I see that example. Or maybe a person serves in a way that you hadn't even thought of, that you now, it's on your radar. Like, oh, hey, I see that person doing that. Well, I know how to do that, or I could try that. I'm willing to try that. I think this quote from Robert Rappa is pretty helpful. He says, the purpose of freedom, biblically speaking, is the capacity to obey God and do his will by being empowered by God's Spirit to serve his neighbor in love. So the thing I want to give you guys a heads up on, the last couple of weeks, several table leaders have passed along that you guys want to serve, and you've given like, hey, I would like to serve by helping someone with something, broken plumbing or a car problem and whatnot. So the thing I want to make you guys aware of, it's something we'll be announcing in about 5 or 6 weeks, is we're compiling ways of bringing in information of people who have needs. A widow who, like, they just need their driveway plowed right now, or they need someone to help them get to a doctor's appointment, or they have something wrong in their house, but they can't do it, or a single mom or whatnot. All of these needs, and pairing them with people who have skills that go with them. So several people like offered great skills, and skills that you probably do for a living, but you're willing to volunteer them to help someone out in the church or nearby in one of these towns nearby, and that's great. So in your table discussion, I want you guys to pass those along. Say, hey, I would love to help this way. I want to encourage you guys to do that. So what will be happening is if you say, hey, I have a skill in helping fix cars, we're going to pair you with a person who's kind of head over that and say, hey, I got a phone call from so-and-so. They're a widow. They got this need. They just need something simple like their oil being changed, what have you, right? So that's one way. The other thing that we talked about that Paul brought up back in the fall is asking for men who can teach life skills to younger men. Okay, you guys remember that? He brought up and asked for a list. And so that will be part of that umbrella. That, oh, hey, this teenager over here, they don't really have someone in their life who can show them how to, anywhere from like shaving to how do you know if I need to take care of something on my car or whatnot. If they're a teenager who's starting to get a car, they're starting to make their way out of the house, like giving them some life skills. And you guys have plenty of that. So I want to make you aware of that's coming up. So continue to listen in for how that's going. I've been working with various other staff members to see how that's going and what that looks like, and telling them, hey, I've got some great men who are willing to help out. The other main thing that you see as an action is to accept one another. So when I say accept, I know popular culture has hijacked this term. When I say accept, I do not equate approve. Because I accept someone else, that doesn't necessarily mean I approve of everything they do and say. Let's read Romans 15:7. I think you'll get what I'm talking about here. Receive one another then, just as Christ also received you to God's glory. So when Christ received you, he received you with all your imperfections, your preferences, your misnomers, all your baggage. And he's asking, if that is how Christ has done for you, you should do that to others. But we have a common goal towards Christ's likeness and holiness. We're not just saying, hey, I accept you. Oh, it's okay that you keep sinning forever and ever. No, that's not what we're talking about. And that's sometimes what you'll hear is just accept anything and everything. No, I'm willing to accept a person because Christ has accepted them and forgiven their sins, and they now have trusted in the gospel, and they're a brother or a sister. So that is a lot of communication to do that. And it's a lot of patience to do that with someone else. I mean, that's hard. But that comes at the end of this great book of Romans. He's talked about all kinds of theology, and you could even say all of his theology is leading up to encouraging the church to say, I want you to accept one another instead of condemning one another because they have a sin that you don't struggle with. That's hard. But it doesn't mean that we leave them there. Christ accepts me, but he's not going to leave me in my sorry state of wallowing in my sins and staying there. Okay? On the other hand, we've got communication. So actions and communication. So the first one I want to talk about is you can grow in Christ's likeness. You can encourage one another with, yes, Jesus is coming back. But between now and then, there's a lot we can say to help one another. But some of them are going to be tough conversations. So you can go ahead to the next one. In positive communication, we could talk about all kinds we could talk about sports, we could talk about this. But in our communication with brothers and sisters, we can, at the very least, we can admonish one another. So you're right there in Romans 15, just a few sentences further down in verse 14. But I myself am fully convinced about you, my brothers and sisters, that you yourselves are full of goodness, filled with all knowledge, and able to instruct or admonish one another. I'll be honest. I don't like admonishment. I really don't. I don't like people telling me I'm doing something wrong. I mean, I want to say sometimes I'm humble, and it will actually, those guys work with me, so they know, okay? So it's hard to say I will accept someone else's admonishment, but I'm willing to accept their admonishment if I know their heart. Like, I know that when they tease me about doing something wrong at work, I know that they actually care about me. Like, I really don't want to hear from someone I know who doesn't care about me or doesn't want to see anything in my best interest happen at all. The second one, you can go ahead and put it up, is encouragement. So you guys can look at these passages later if you want to write them down. I think they're pretty straightforward. They just say, let us encourage one another by each other's faith. They almost repeat the same thing. I want to spend a little more time on the last one, which I think is probably the hardest. Confess. So jump over to James chapter 5. James chapter 5. Verse 16, right at the end of the letter of James. So confess your sins to one another and pray for one another so that you may be healed. The prayer of a righteous man has great effectiveness. I imagine you guys can think of plenty of reasons why this is hard, and you can probably also think of plenty of excuses of why not to. It's not an easy ask. It isn't. It says, confess your sins, not just to God, but to one another. Last I checked, I'm usually sinning like every day, usually a few times a day, in my thought life or my actions or my words. So if it's been like a few years since I've confessed, what do you think I'm missing? I'm missing this opportunity right here. And pray for one another so that you may be healed. That's the point. The point isn't just to be like, did you sin? Yeah. Did you sin? Yeah, me too. Okay. And we all suck. No. So share a quick story. A couple years ago, in my group of close friends, fellowship that I had down in Texas, one of the guys came to our weekly gathering. We would meet like at Starbucks or something like that. He just flat out came out with it. He said, guys, a couple of days ago, I was looking at porn. And he got into all kinds of details and showed me exactly how and where and when. We've been building that relationship for a couple of years. I mean, that doesn't just happen, right? Now, when he says that, do I go over there and kick him while he's down? I mean, that's not going to do much. I could rail against him about, you shouldn't do that, you shouldn't do that. Why did you do that? You should never do. True, right? I mean, he shouldn't be looking at porn. But what's that? Where's that going to go? That's going to lead to him shutting down. He ain't going to tell me nothing again. But what we did do is say, thank you for sharing. That took boldness. He was able to and willing to do that because the other guys in the group had already done that. Not with the same issue, but with other issues that we had to confess. And thereafter, when we were talking with him, we tried to put some plan in place, some accountability in place, and he got the healing he needed. Because this was not like a one-time incident, right? It's usually not a one-time incident for something like that. But he got the healing he needed. He got a better marriage. He got a better way of doing family with his wife and his new baby. He got the healing he's talking about here. Had he kept it secret, can you imagine what that would have done to him? He would have been hiding. He would have been listening to lies about, no, you can't say that. You can't say that. They don't want to hear that. You just stay over here and delude yourself into thinking you're okay when you're not. Confession is just telling it like it is. And I know that that's not a small thing to ask. It's not. But there's a good environment for it, right? He knew I loved him. I cared for him. I'd already been in the fight with him. I've already been there doing life with him. And that's why I'm trying to encourage you guys with all these things. This is like a casual passerby sitting in a pew and walking out. That's not something to ask. Okay? But it is a call to ask here, where you guys have the opportunity. If you want to pull someone aside afterwards, you want to pull me aside afterwards. Okay? I know it's sensitive. I know it's tough. If you want to continue to wait and build trust over time, that's totally understandable. Okay? But we are hoping that we continue to develop an atmosphere here where you're willing to say, I'm willing to trust those guys. I also want the healing. I want more. So the last thing I want to bring up is that we're listing out a lot of things, right, in the last few weeks, and next week we'll add a couple more. I know that these are not small asks. You could go to lots of churches around, and you could be anonymous. You could be a sheep sitting in the back, doing whatever, and come and go as you please. You could be disconnected. You could be nominal. You could be a lone sheep who gets picked off by wolves. Or you could hunger for more. I don't know about you, but I mean, I don't want to just be like, I'll just twiddle my thumbs and I'll just keep making it by. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm just surviving. You can see the work of God in your life. You can see the scriptures actually happen in front of your face. Like, wow, he said that. I mean, I know he said that like almost 2,000 years ago, but that is what I need. That is happening. That is real. You get to see that. And you get to partake in a gift of God. Your brothers are a gift to you, and you are to them. And doing these things in fellowship is a way for you to take advantage of that gift. And I think as soon as you start hungering and you get a taste for seeing that more, like when I had that fellowship with those guys, his boldness caused me to be more bold. Caused me to say, I'm going to take sin seriously, just like you are. I want more. I want a hunger and thirst for righteousness, which Jesus said will be rewarded. So as you guys continue to talk, as you guys continue to go out this night and then next week, and then as we talk about other topics, I want to continue to help you consider what is my priority level for my brothers and sisters in Christ. And take advantage of the gift that God has given you for helping you to grow to become more like the Son. Okay? So there's some discussion questions at the table which talk about several of these things. And then, quick reminder, if you have things you want to volunteer, say, I'd like to serve in such and such a way, let your table leader know, let someone else know, okay? And then we'll go ahead and wrap up at our usual time, and I'm going to pass along your notes to the women upstairs.